I'm going to just take a 30-second and say this decade of my life, I am dedicating it to essentially looking at chronic diseases with the hope that we can make chronic diseases completely a matter of choice, not a matter of bad luck. And we hope that within our lifetime, we're going to see where no one in the world ever have to suffer from these diseases. And when I say chronic diseases, I really mean obesity, diabetes, heart diseases, cancer, Alzheimer, Parkinson's, depression, anxiety. These are the diseases that are absolutely preventable and that are absolutely reversible. Now, with that, most of you know Deepak. Deepak needs absolutely no introduction. So, but I'm going to ask Deepak to actually talk about this decade, the next 10 years of his life, what he's going to focus on now that he has written 100 books and done everything that one could possibly imagine in their lifetime or multiple lifetimes. So, Deepak, what is your decade is going to be focused on?
So, Naveen, as you and I have been friends for a while, you've seen that this last year, I've been really focused on the understanding that the human landscape right now is going through what is called grief. Grief happens when you lose a way of life or you take something for granted, you don't have it anymore. So, as a physician, I've seen grief a lot. Working in the emergency room, I've seen people go through the whole cycle of grief within 1 hour. They have a heart attack and they know they're dying. Everybody knows they're dying. So what do they go through? They first feel victimized, then they get angry, then there's some hostility, then there's frustration, there's helplessness. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people die in the stage of helplessness. Once in a while, I've people finding acceptance of what is, not what was, not what will be, but what is right now. As soon as they find acceptance, they discover meaning. So this year for me was, what is the meaning of this pandemic? What is happening? And I realized that this is an opportunity not only to reinvent the body, but also resurrect the soul and actually rethink humanity. If you want to talk about this, I'm very happy. But
please. So talk about that, Deepak. So this is your, I mean, obviously purpose in life that you have found now. And I want to hear about, because that's rethink humanity. How would you rethink humanity? And I know you're also talking about this whole universe biome and things like that. So we're going to get to it. But in terms of rethinking humanity, what is your concept of rethinking humanity?
One is the resurrection of our collective creativity and collective vision, a shared vision complementing strengths with maximum diversity of people, from philosophers to scientists to geneticists to storytellers to entertainers to journalists to educationists, complementing each other's strengths, shared vision. And that shared vision is a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. For that, we need to understand the pillars of well-being in the human body. And of course, when there's personal transformation and there are enough people going through personal transformation, there is what we call social transformation. You can't have social transformation in the absence of personal transformation. In Mahatma Gandhi's word, can you be the change you want to see in the world? So peace can be only created by peaceful people. Love can only be shown by those who have experienced love. Similarly, if we want to create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world, we need a radical transformation in community well-being, social well-being, financial well-being, which includes economic well-being, but also physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, which has been my emphasis in the last decade. Now, what we are talking to is actually a think tank where we are looking at 5 sectors that drive human civilization. The first is information technology. So you're an expert in that, and artificial intelligence, but VR, augmented reality, artificial intelligence systems, but also the convergence of these information technologies. So they're distributed, they also come together for the shared vision. The second is energy. We now know that the oil-free economy is possible from ground up, from using gravity and ocean and sun and sky and photons and vehicles and particles. We can create an energy revolution that is independent of fossil fuels, which will help, of course, the microbiome, which you want to talk about. The third area is transportation. Now we have autonomous transportation. You've been to Lake Nona with me, where we have created a technology center. Everything is autonomous, and all the cars are fossil free, and everything is autonomous. It's already futuristic. So, transportation. The fourth is food. Food through precision fermentation from the bottom up, but going deeper and resurrecting the planetary biome, which has now I've confirmed this data, talking to a lot of people, I've been talking to photobiologists. There is
Yeah.
more richness of genetic information under the ground than on the surface of the entire planet. So if you go to the Amazon or any other part of the world, which is relatively not polluted, under the surface of the soil, you'll find maximum diversity of the planetary biome, not just the human biome, all species.
Yep.
We can resurrect sentience on the planet by resurrecting the planetary biome. And the last thing is matter. Right now, everything is based on extraction: oil, coal, minerals, gold, whatever. But it's not going to be that way in the future. Manufacturing of materials will be from photons and particles, and we'll have quantum technologies to immediately see how the information that we extract is entangled, so we can actually create matter out of nothing. So that's the future. Now, this
Nothing. Yeah.
requires a lot of cooperation, global cooperation, think tanks, investors, but we are seeing the emergence of a new paradigm. And I think it will be a paradigm of plenitude, of abundance, of free energy, and hopefully a species that is not bent on its extinction. Because right now, with mechanized death, atomic weapons, cyber warfare, biological warfare, the capacity we have to destroy this world is 20 times more than we need. So the last extinction was 65 million years ago. And if we don't change
Yeah.
the way we look at the future, we might as well go to the bar and get drunk. Or we can create a new world.
So, Deepak, I'm going to get us back on the topic of happiness, right? So, in my mind, happiness is not about absence of unhappiness, right? Because a lot of people just believe if they can find a way to get rid of the things that make them unhappy, somehow you become happy, right? So, you can look at the thing, the unhappiness comes from the gap between your expectations and reality, right? So if your reality is something different what you expect, then suddenly you're unhappy, and that creates this unhappiness in the things, right? And once you learn to expect and accept that it is what it is and it is going to be what's going to be, then you suddenly start to find the true happiness. And I think you said something that's really interesting, is that happiness comes from inside you, right? Happiness is something you create on your own and you share with the world. You can't expect to have someone or something outside you that can possibly make you happy, because that means you're giving up the control of your happiness to someone or something else, and then you will never find that true happiness, right? Another concept that I really personally enjoy is that the only way we know we are alive, Deepak, and you obviously you're an MD, so you know, is we have a heartbeat. And what does the heartbeat look like? It goes up and down and up and down. And when you have the smooth, then you're dead. Now, a lot of the people feel this up and down is the frustration and unhappiness without understanding that is the adventure of life. If you're looking for a life that's smooth, you're looking for a dead life. And that's not what's going to make you happy. So with that, Deepak, I'm just going to ask you, how do you think about, how do you think about happiness? And what does happiness mean to you? And how would you describe it to people who want to find happiness?
Okay, so you made some very good points about the fact that happiness comes from within. About a decade ago, some of us met His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Vancouver, and he challenged the scientists to come up with what he calls his social scientists come up with a formula for happiness. So, of course, everybody went back to work, and we went back a few years later with the formula. Here's the formula: H is equal to S plus C plus V. H stands for happiness, is equal to S.
Yeah.
S stands for set point in the brain. So what is the set point in the brain? Happy people have a set point where no matter what the situation is, they see an opportunity. No matter what the situation is, COVID-19, conflict
Mhm,
in the world, Wall Street collapsing, they're seeing they're seeing an opportunity. The unhappy people see, of course, a problem. Okay, and now how does this
yeah.
point get determined? Well, according to social science, the set point gets determined in childhood through a mechanism called mirror neurons. So, if your parents
Mhm,
or caretakers were constantly complaining, condemning, criticizing, playing the victim, that's how you grow up. You have no choice. Your parents were saying this, you heard this conversation, your neurons are mirroring unhappiness. On the other hand, if your
mhm,
parents were always looking for opportunity or your caretakers, that's how you grow up. This set
mhm,
point determines 50% of our happiness experience on a daily basis. So you say, well,
mhm,
if my set point was determined by my parents, I have no chance. I'm screwed. They were depressed and I'm depressed too. Now the data shows you can change your set point through what we call vipassana and other mindfulness meditation techniques, but also through reflective inquiry or cognitive inquiry. Cognitive inquiry means you question every
mhm.
assumption, every belief you have. Actually, you can also automate this through AI. So that's 50% of your happiness experience. The second part of the happiness formula is H is equal to S plus C. C is conditions
Mhm.
of living. How much money do you make? And the data shows that the extremely rich and the extremely poor are unhappy because they're obsessed with money. Okay, the
Yeah.
extremely rich can think of nothing other than money. The extremely poor can think of nothing other than money. So if you win the lottery, you'll be ecstatic. But 6 months later, your set point will start to plateau. And 1 year, you'll be back where you were. And 5 years later, you'll be unhappier because now you're worried about the stock market, about tax havens, this, that, the other. You want to go to the Bahamas, this, that, the other. So 12% is what you get out of money. If you win the lottery, you'll be ecstatic, but in 1 year, you'll back to baseline. The remaining 40% or so comes from what they call voluntary choices. We make two
Mhm.
kinds of voluntary choices every day. One is for personal pleasure, entertainment, fancy house, boat, plane, etc. Does that make you happy? Yes, but only for a while. You get a new device after 6 months, you have to upgrade
Mhm.
it. So personal pleasure gives you happiness, but only temporarily. The real happiness
Yep.
comes from what we call fulfillment. And fulfillment happens when you have meaning, purpose, when you have a higher vision, you take responsibility. And the fastest way to be happy, if you want to give somebody a dopamine hit right now, is to give them attention, which means
Mhm.
deep listening, affection, which means deep caring, affection, being deeply grateful for their presence in your life, and acceptance. Don't try to change anyone. It's hard enough to change yourself. That's the happiness formula. H is equal to S plus C plus V. And it's now well accepted among social scientists.
So
We
there you
didn't
go, Deepak. So all I
The biome is
so
also very necessary for happiness, as you know. All the peptides,
yeah.
serotonin is produced here in the gut. So you can talk about that.
No, actually, I was going to say was that I actually like the idea of instant happiness. So I am grateful to you for your presence. I am absolutely deeply listening, and I'm deeply affectionate for everything you have done for the humanity as such. So thank you for giving me instant happiness just by being you and your presence. Right now, having said that, we were just talking about that other concept is about this gut brain axis, and it's really a two-way street about that. How your mindset, what you think changes your gut microbiome, and your gut microbiome changes how you think. And some of the very recent research I think that came out, Deepak, and I want to get your thoughts on it, is they took 18 people that were at alcohol addiction, completely addicted to alcohol, could not live without it. And all they did was it completely replaced their microbiome through fecal transplant, and their addiction to alcohol went away. So it does that. I mean, are they really the one controlling? I mean, our gut is really the key to controlling our brains. What do you think of that?
Well, this is a very major concept in the Indian tradition of Ayurveda. That if
Yeah,
your digestive power, or they call it Agni, is powerful, you will
yeah,
be happy. If your gut is happy, you'll be happy. Now we know, obviously, that chronic depression, chronic anxiety, and chronic inflammation is the common factor, as you said, in almost every chronic disease. It doesn't matter whether it's autoimmune illness or propensity to cancer or accelerated aging. I'm 74. I'm taking care of my body. My biological age is in the 30s right now. So,
yeah,
because of all the things that I do, but this is not meant to be a show off session. But the
yeah,
fact is, if you take deep breaths, if you manage stress, if you do yoga, controlled breathing, exercise, healthy emotions, but most importantly, change your microbiome, you can change your state of mental well being. And why is that? Well, as we now know, most of the peptides that we call the molecules of emotion, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, opiates, anandamide, a new peptide, these are immunomodulators, but they also fine tune the immune system, but they're also the messengers or molecules of emotion. So when you're stressed and your sympathetic nervous system is overactive, you make cortisol and you make adrenaline. One causes inflammation, the other weakens your immune system because of excessive production of corticosteroids. On the other hand, if you're feeling happy, then there's another pathway of the autonomic nervous system, which is called the parasympathetic nervous system, where the vagus nerve dominates, the 10th cranial nerve, which actually goes from the midbrain, influences your facial expressions. Are you happy? Are you unhappy? Your eye movements, your body language, your gestures. You can take, instead of doing a selfie, you do a welfie. A welfie is a 10-second video that can look at facial recognition, eye movements, and body language, and then correlate that through AI with all the things we're talking about. Heart rate variability. You mentioned heart rate variability, which is the
yeah,
best
yeah.
indicator of whether you're stressed or not. So, heart rate variability,
Hmm?
galvanic skin response, breathing rate, and all these can be correlated in a way that changing the genetic information, 99% is in the gut. So where is the brain? I now believe that the brain only speaks in English with an Indian accent over here, but the brain is actually in your gut. It's also in your heart. If you look at the
Yeah.
neurons in your heart, in the gut, your body is your brain, and the dominant brain is the neuroectoderm, which is in the gut. You change the gut,
Yes.
you change a person's life.
Is that the reason why the Brahma starts in the navel? Is that where the life starts from?
Well,
Is that really the meaning of life?
in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there's a whole chapter on what they call
Yeah,
siddhis and vidhis. So
yeah,
one of the siddhis is happiness and joy. And also there are other siddhis: equanimity, empathy, compassion, love, joy. But if you actually understand the significance of the navel is where we got the information to create our body. When you became a fertilized ovum after your mom and dad had a good time, then after that, everything that happened to you came through the umbilical cord. So there
yeah.
are practices actually in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi on the navel, which gives you an experience which today in modern science we would call interoception instead of perception.
Mm,
And
mm,
interoception is linked to the limb of yoga that we call pratyahara. So pratyahara, vagal stimulation, interoception gives you knowledge of what gives the yogi knowledge of what's happening inside the body, and then modulate that through intention and through meditation, dharana, dhyan, samadhi.
So, Deepak, having worked with you, and as you know, you are an advisor to Viome, and we have been doing this thing together. And they're this three-legged stool. And that's really, to me, what has really fascinating to me is that most people somehow become this silver bullet that if you just do yoga, you can be happy. If you just did meditation, you can be happy. Or if you just ate the right food, you can be happy. But we all know these three things all have to come together. There is a movement, there is a proper nutrition, and there is a meditation. Because if any one of the things are imbalanced, you're going to have this imbalanced world, and you can never be in the homeostasis. The homeostasis comes when the whole body actually is working together as one. And as we really realize finally is that, when your brain is stressed and, because you're worried about getting fired, or you're worried about not having enough money, or the Tesla stock went up or went down, whatever, depending on whatever is going on in your life, you always find this stress signal that actually changes the gut microbiome. And with the proper nutrition, you can actually fix it so that you actually don't get stressed. And meditation is another mechanism to be able to actually look at the world, not just as is, but what you visualize it to be. And I think I was going to ask you, because I, even both from the perspective of Eastern philosophy that you and I both believe in, which is focus on the action and a karma, and let the destiny be what it is. And the way I look at that stuff is, if the things are out of my control, I never worry about them. There's very little I can do about it. And if things are in my control, I say, I am the best person. I'm doing the best I can. And it is what it is, and it will be what will be. And that's one way to constantly find that happiness, that was nothing rattles me. It is what it is, and it will be what will be, and I live my life just the way it is. And I think a lot of that I actually learned from you, that in that anxiety and stress doesn't help anything other than simply run like the head cut off like a chicken with the head cut off, but nothing really happens, and no productivity happens. So if you want to find happiness, what is your other than the formula for happiness? If you tell people, hey, you want to be happy, here's what you do, what would that be?
Be present right now, because that's all you have. There is never a moment of arrival other than this moment. Okay, there's never going to be a point of arrival other than now. So all anxieties, regrets about the past, or planning for the future. But if you're planning for the future all the time, when the future arrives, you won't be present for it. So what's the point? If you can cultivate presence right now to what is, this is a miracle of creation. Right this moment, the universe is emerging from nothingness. And that includes you. You are part of the universe. You cannot separate yourself. You cannot step out of space and time to watch the universe from the outside. You are an expression of it this moment. And this moment is a moment of creation. Right now, spontaneously. What are you doing right now to maintain homeostasis? What are you doing right now to fine tune your immune system? What are you doing right now to regulate your blood pressure? Answer is nothing. In fact, you're interfering with it. You're interfering with it by planning for the future, for which you won't be present, by regretting the past, which doesn't exist. This moment is presence. And if you are present, this is also your window to a consciousness which is outside of space-time, which we call Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means the truth of awareness of existence. Chit is pure consciousness, and Ananda is joy for no reason whatsoever, which you see in a child. Rabindranath Tagore, every child that is born is proof that God has not yet given up on human beings. Okay, so every child is an example of spontaneous joy, Ananda. And now we even have a peptide named after it. It's called Anandamide. Anandamide is a neuropeptide that's an immunomodulator. It's found in the gut. It's found in the brain. It's found everywhere.
So, Deepak, do you and I really exist, or we are just hallucinating that I see you as a beautiful soul?
Well, the Vedantists refer to the world as Jagat Mithya, the world appearance. Western philosopher Wittgenstein suggested the same thing. Wittgenstein said, our life is a dream. We are asleep, but once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. So who do we wake up to is the witnessing awareness in which the body, mind, and world experience is a changing modality of knowing and experience, sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts within less than 1% of the bandwidth of experience that's available to us. So the human eye, for example, I only see between
Yeah.
300, 800 nanometers, and the rest is not available unless you use infrared,
Sure.
telescopes, ultraviolet, etc.
Yeah.
But everyday reality is, of course, based on a hallucination. The earth appears flat. We know it's not flat. The ground is stationary. We know it's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. Your body looks a three-dimensional structure in space-time. It's proportionately as void as intergalactic space. So the whole thing is a hallucination. You and I are fictional characters in a collective dreamscape. Now that we can do VR, it's totally understandable. I gave a lecture at MIT 3 months ago, which I think I sent to you, where we
Yeah.
say the whole world is a virtual reality, and that includes your body mind. So if it's a virtual reality, if it's a software simulation, who or what is doing the simulation? And the answer is a non-local consciousness. No matter what you call it, Brahman, Ein Sof, God is a kind of a tricky term, because as soon as you say God, you have an image. Well, what the fundamental reality is without form, and it's going
Yeah.
on and off, fluctuating as form and form phenomena right now. So every thought is a fluctuation, every heartbeat is a fluctuation, every breath is a fluctuation, every sensation is a fluctuation. So this is also part of Kashmir Shaivism and Vedanta, Purusha and Prakriti. So Purusha is pure consciousness, Prakriti is the fluctuations that give rise to the world appearance that we call Jagat Mithya. And the fun part of this is, if you know that you're not the software, you're the programmer, you're not even the hardware, you are the one who's doing the programming, then you can upgrade the dream. Right now, what we call the dream is a collective nightmare heading to extinction.
So that's very interesting, Deepak. So I look at the stuff and saying people are looking for happiness while they actually may not even exist for themselves, and they're trying to find something that for something that doesn't quite exist, because it's all our perception. If everything is a hallucination, everything is a perception, then why are people chasing something in their hallucination?
It's called Leela, which is the play of consciousness, and Maya. Maya is actually a very interesting word. Maya is related to the word myth, mata, matrika, mother, matter, meter, music, matrix. So we are living in the matrix right now, literally, but who's in charge of the matrix is you. So we can't get away with this. You know, there is only one reality, and that reality is pure consciousness. And what we call Atman and Jiva, are aspects of that one reality. So don't say that our projection is our collective dreamscape. But who or what is projecting that is the matrix. And what is the matrix? It's the sentience that creates the experience of the biosphere. So if we understand actually the genetic information is responsible for every biological organism, which in turn is projecting through the matrix and participating as a conscious agent in the production of what we call our collective reality. Nothing can be more important. Once you understand Atman is Brahman, you are the source, then by transcending to the source, you can actually harness the powers of creativity, inspiration, insight, intuition, vision, transcendence, and literally reinvent your body and resurrect the world. And I mean it literally, because everything else that we call matter is a metaphor. Biome is a metaphor. Genetic information are metaphors. They are human constructs for modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness, which is the most valuable resource we have for collective imagination. We talk about imagination. How do you imagine? I mean, if I think ask you right now, think of your mother and you see her face. Think of the Empire State Building, you see that. Think of a rainbow, you see that. What did you do to create that image? If you understand the mechanics of how you create images, how you create thoughts, how you create feelings, how you nurture relationships, how you interact with the ecosystem, then the world is yours. You know, that's what they meant when they said aham brahmasmi. Aham brahmasmi literally means I am the universe. Tattvam asi, you are the universe. I am the universe. We are the universe, and that's all there is. The rest is hocus pocus storytelling. Some of those stories are scientific stories, and we believe them to be true. But every scientific theory that has ever come to this planet has been discarded. In fact, that's one of the ways we do science. We call it falsification. The previous theory was better than the one before that, but the next one is going to be better and it will still be incomplete. That's part of Gödel's theorem in mathematics too.
So, if you look at this whole idea of universe, I mean, this whole universe itself is a hallucination. And we are that universe, which essentially is a hallucination. But let's stick back to the reality, because I think a lot of the people are probably going to get lost here in this concept here. So I'm going to bring it back, because ultimately we as humans, we may be hallucinating, but we have this pride. We still get sick. We still see our loved ones suffer. We talk about these chronic diseases, and you could talk about that. That's just a hallucination. You really don't have a cancer. It's all a hallucination. But you know what? People do have it. People die from it, right? So to me, how do you reconcile? First of all, I think you and I once chatted. That was really interesting concept that you brought in, that most people believe in this human genes. And I think you mentioned that less than few percent of your genes are fully penetrant. Can you explain that concept? Rest really comes from the things that we do after we are born. And somehow we believe our genes are our destiny.
So first of all, we know that less than 1% of the genetic information in your body is actually human. 25,000 human genes, 2 million microbial genes. And if you lived in the Amazon, maybe 20 million microbial genes. So the number of microbial genes varies depending on where you live. Okay, the richer the microbial diversity, the healthier you'll be. The richer the microbial diversity in your body, the healthier you'll be. You know this better than I do through your AR. 5% or less of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. I'll repeat that. You have to be very careful how you phrase that. 5% or less. It's probably 3% to 4%, depending on who you talk to. Rudy Tanzi, for example, believes it's 3% of chronic illness is guaranteed because of a genetic mutation. So let's say you have a genetic mutation, a woman has a genetic mutation like BRCA gene. Angelina Jolie is the story. She had a mastectomy because she wanted to prevent cancer. And obviously that was the right thing to do. Now we have on the horizon something called CRISPR, already approved for sickle cell anemia and a few other things, but not generally approved right now. But in a few years, you'll be able to cut and paste genes the way you do emails. You delete the gene that's destructive, insert the one that is healthy, and you basically cut and paste genes the way you do emails. Unfortunately, that will help only less than 5% people, because only 5% or less are fully penetrant mutations. The rest are influenced by lifestyle, including sleep, including stress management, including emotions. Most importantly, nutrition, microbiome, healthy microbiome, but also connection with nature, personal relationships, social interactions. This is a holistic view of well-being where the gut microbiome plays a very big difference. But the nice thing about this is, as we look at the mathematics of this and the algorithms of this, the nice thing, which is what you're doing partly with Biome, is that the future of well-being is, number one, precise. Number two, personalized. It's different for you than your wife or your children. No diet is 100% universal, as you said. So future is precise, personalized, predictable, preventable, participatory, and a process. If we understand this thoroughly, then actually, in theory, 95% of disease is preventable and even reversible. Now, I have to be very careful because people, they'll have this attitude, gotcha, Deepak goes there again, But I personally have never been sick, Naveen. I don't take any medications. I'm 74. My biological age is in 35 or 37 because I practice what I've been talking about for the last 40 years. So chronic illness is a choice. I'm telling you that unless you have those 5% gene mutations that are penetrant, for which there will be also treatment in the near future
Yeah, yeah,
with gene
yeah.
editing. So we are looking at a very bright future in the future of well-being.
So that's very interesting, Deepak. I mean, as you know, when I started Viome, our tagline was very simple. Imagine living in a world where being sick is a choice. That means it is optional. You and I get to make that choice whether we want to be sick or not. So don't think it's a matter of bad luck. It is really a matter of bad choices we make rather than really bad luck. And I think, as you said, if we do the things that brings the body back into homeostasis, we sleep well, we meditate, we do yoga, and we eat personalized, precise nutrition, that is actually what's going to keep us healthy. And you are a living example of that, that you don't take medication. Being a doctor, which is really interesting part, is that you believe the most doctors will tell you that you have to be, give me a ill, I'll give you a pill, right? And that's not
Okay,
true
so
anymore.
let me respond to that. Okay?
Yeah.
I am an internist, a neuroendocrinologist, and somebody who looks into consciousness. So a few years
Okay.
ago, I
Yeah.
decided to look at what are 90% of the prescriptions in a hospital, any hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
5 things: pain, anxiety, nausea, insomnia, constipation. You want to remember the acronym? Panic, pain, anxiety, nausea, insomnia, constipation. 5 things dominate 90% of the prescriptions in any pharmacy. They are all stress related. The pillars of well being we are talking about and changing the microbiome, you get 90% of drugs out of the way. Now, 10% are of optional or marginal benefit. If you have pneumonia, you better take the antibiotic, okay? Otherwise, you might die of pneumonia.
Sure.
Uh, right now, with all the COVID, you better wait for the right vaccine and get it done. So don't be foolish about it. And if you want to address what you said, okay, this is a hallucination, so why bother? Why get cancer? Because it's better to have upgraded dream than downgraded nightmare. Number one. Okay. Number one. Number two, we still haven't answered the question of existential suffering. You can have the best relationships in the world. You can have the best health in the world, as I do. But one day
Mhm.
you will get old, you will get infirmity, and you will die. Okay? So, this is what
Yeah.
the great scholars, Vedantists, and the rishis taught us. They said, no matter how healthy your biome is, they didn't use the word biome, Agni
Mhm.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But no
Yeah.
matter how healthy you are, you're still going to die one day. And
Yeah.
you're going to worry about it. So, old age, infirmity, and death is going to cause you anxiety and suffering. And they said that these are called the 5 kleshas in Sanskrit. Klesha number one, you don't know who you are. You're confusing your provisional identity with your real identity. Basically, you're confusing your selfie with yourself. That's what
Mhm.
your ego identity is, your selfie. It's not yourself. So, number one, you're confusing your identity with something that's a changing sensation, period. Number two, so that's the first klesha. The second klesha is clinging and grasping at things that actually have a very limited lifespan. Whatever you cling, whether it's your iPhone or your body or your house, it has a limited lifespan. It's time bound. Number three is recoiling from impermanence. Number four is identifying with the ego. And number five is the fear of death. And they're all connected to one thing: you don't know who you are. You've confused yourself with your selfie.
I was going to just the 5 things that you mentioned that people go to the hospital from the prescription medicine, and I was going to just share with you data live here. So we've been looking at the anxiety and depression and constipation and diarrhea. Those are, 3 of the things you mentioned there. Is very, very interesting. just with the precision nutrition and the personalized nutrition. So Deepak, this is a very brand new data. In 4 months, we were able to see a 36% improvement on people who have IBS, which is a stomach pain, digestion issues, which is constipation and diarrhea. 36% improvement just with the nutrition. Depression, the clinical score for IBS is, by the way, IBS SSS, which is a symptom severity score. For depression, the way you measure clinically the PHQ-9, and with the precise nutrition, we were able to reduce the PHQ-9 in 4 months by 32%. There is not a drug out there that actually had that kind of efficacy. For anxiety, we looked at GAD-7, which is the clinical score for anxiety, down by 29% in 4 months, right? And to me, I mean, now imagine people go out there and buying these massive amount of drugs for something that food is the medicine. And that to me is such a key, Deepak, that I don't understand how this medical industrial complex has been giving us all these medicine, especially what we saw. Another thing that I was going to share with you was we looked at things like autoimmune disease, IBD, and colorectal cancer. Now, not only it is coming from your saliva oral microbiome, but it is on the people who are taking anti-acid drugs, things like Nexium. These things are not getting killed and are actually now causing all these diseases. And that's one reason why younger and younger people are getting these colorectal cancer, IBD, because so many of us are taking these anti-acid drugs. So to me, I just wanted, to get your thought. I mean, you as a doctor would not have believed me 30 years ago when you came out of the medical school. And if I told you all these nutrition are actually making me healthier or not having these diseases, you would have looked at me and said, what kind of voodoo and cuckoo are you?
Well, I have to say, when patients told me that they changed their diet and their asthma disappeared, or their heart disease reversed, or their cancer went into remission, occasionally, they would say that, and I didn't believe them. I said, how can changing your diet reverse a chronic illness? But now that we have this information about the biome, which is actually very recent, it's less than maybe 10 years that we actually have surfaced and looked at the human microbiome. This is a revolution in medicine that is unprecedented. And it's going to go further because we're going to go beyond the human microbiome. As I said, the source of sentience on this life, and even the biosphere is dependent on genetic information. And what is genetic information? It's the symbolic representation of conscious agents. So biological organisms are conscious agents. Now, this book is not a conscious agent, but biological organisms are conscious agents that allow you to experience this book. And this book is a human experience. A mosquito or an insect with 100 eyes would have a different experience. So what is life? Life is the projection of consciousness. Once we get that, then you are at the control center of the total matrix, literally.
Yeah, but here's the thing, we talked about reality, and I think you and I have talked about it in the past before, and I'll just bring it up. The reality is really not real. It is very specific to any species, because what we see as a palm tree or an ocean, the mosquitoes does not see that. The bat sees completely different. The dog see completely different. So what is really reality?
So there are two kinds of reality. One is provisional. Provisional reality is perceptual experience and cognitive interpretation of perceptual experience. So if any time we experience anything, it's either a sensation, perception, or an image, or a feeling, or a thought. If you can think of any experience that's outside of that, please come over and teach the rest of the world what that experience is. There's no experience outside of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. The rest is a human story. And these are stories. You started with, the first story was mythology. The second story was religion. The third story was theology. The fourth story was philosophy. The fifth story is science. The sixth story is technology. The seventh story is virtual reality. And the eighth story is the matrix. And then the ninth story is what's behind that. You see, this is how we are evolving. So there is a provisional identity, which is time bound. but there's an absolute identity which is timeless. When we say I am Deepak or I am Naveen, the common factor is I am. That I am experience is present in all sentience. After that, it's a modification, it's a story. So we call that story, in India, we call that story karma. But actually, it's a big misinterpretation of karma. Karma is just actions that are either conscious or unconscious. So the moment you start making conscious choices, you're no longer in the field of karma. You're in the field of kriya. You become a creator. Okay, so karma is a prison, which is the collective conditioned social conditioning. It's the hypnosis of collective conditioning. You go beyond that and you find creativity. Now, few people are creative naturally. Einstein, Niels Bohr, artists and storytellers and great musicians. By and large, 99% of our thoughts recycled social conditioning.
So, Deepak, I'm going to look at some of the questions, and the two questions that are really interesting. One is about what is success? And I thought maybe I'm going to give you my view of what success is, and I would like to hear yours. So, my view of success is never defined by how much money you have in the bank. Success in my world is defined as the number of lives you're able to improve yourself, right? And it comes from primarily being humble, the humility that, I mean, you embody humility. I've never seen you angry. I've never seen you with ego, right? And the humility is a sign of success, right? Because if you still have iota of arrogance left in you, that you're trying to prove something to someone or yourself, and that's really the problem why you're not successful, right? So to me, the success is not about what you own. Success is about what you create, how much you contribute to others, and how many people you're able to improve their life on. So what is your definition of success, Deepak?
I think success is basically what you said, but it has three components, to me, very precise
Okay.
components. One is the progressive realization of worthy goals. The progressive realization of worthy goals. So it can't be
Hmm?
only about me, it has to be about a collective vision. Number one. Number two is the ability to love and have compassion. And number three, it is to know that you are the creative center of your reality. That's it. These are the three components of success: progressive realization of worthy goals, love and compassion, and knowing yourself as the creator of your destiny.
So the other question that people are asking is, how do you find your purpose in life? And the way I have at least looked at for myself has always been is that to find a purpose in life, you have to say, what are you willing to die for? And then you live for it. What is it that you're so obsessed about that you jump out of the bed in the morning and you don't hit the snooze button? Because if you ever want to sleep through after you wake up, that means whatever you're doing is not worth doing. You have not found a true purpose in life. So how does someone find a true purpose in life, for people who are listening to this?
You know, the way you were talking right now, I was reminded of my CEO, Punacha Machaya, from
Yeah,
the foundation, whom we both love.
yeah,
He says you have to have a PhD, and PhD stands for passion, hunger, and drive. So, what are you
yeah,
passionate about? What are you hungry about? What are you hungry for? And what's your drive? That's your purpose. Now, this is a big issue in this country. How do I find my purpose? Well,
yeah,
go back to our tradition in the
yeah,
ancient Indian traditions. There are
yeah,
four goals of life: artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. So, artha is make money, be successful. Don't be apologetic. Kama, enjoy pleasure also, but in the context of love and relationship and empathy and compassion and joy. Kama.
mm,
Dharma, align yourself with the elements and forces of the universe. And moksha, be free of all this. Detach. Yogastha kuru karmani. Established in yoga, perform action. That is purpose. So I ask anyone who's deciding to find their purpose, if you had all the money in the world and all the time in the world, what would you do? What is your unique gift?
yeah.
How would you offer it to the world, and who would benefit? That's your purpose. And if you're not doing it, why not?
And so, why is it, Deepak, that people all don't want to do things that make them happy, and then they complain about not being happy? So, in a sense, that every day they wake up in the morning, they regret waking up, they hate going to work, and they don't quit the work because they think somehow there is nothing else out there for them, and they live through their life essentially as a robot with no purpose, no happiness, and then they complain about that's so hard to find happiness. And you and I have always, it doesn't matter. I came from pretty humble background, and I'm sure you came from a humble background, and but we found this happiness, we found this purpose in life, right? So what is it that people are missing? Why is it so difficult for people to find that purpose?
Right now, I think we are living in an age of information technology and social media that people are terribly confused about their identities. And so, what happens is they recycle the same anxieties, same depressions, same complaining, criticizing, condemning, being the victim. It's the same thing, control dramas, nice and manipulative, nasty and manipulative, stubborn and manipulative, playing the victim and manipulative. We have within ourselves resources that go beyond what we call the fight, flight, or reactive responses. Those are
Hmm?
responses of the reptilian brain. But there are responses of the emotional or limbic brain, such as compassion and love and joy and empathy. And then there are responses of the cortical brain, which are creativity and vision. And now, as you know, I've created a digital brain as well. So we have four brains:
Yes.
reptilian, emotional, cortical, and digital. And the digital
Hmm?
brain is one of the reasons I created the digital Deepak, my version of
Yep.
my brain, is it is smarter than I am, because it can consult instantly a library. It will one day speak to the grandchildren of my grandchildren. So, we're looking at a new age where the collective creativity will harness elements and forces both of outer space and inner space in a way that even the authors of the Mahabharata, Ramayana, or the Homer of Odyssey and Iliad had no idea. We are going beyond that.
So Deepak, have you now become immortal? Because if your experiences, your way of thinking can now be basically you uploaded your brain to a new holographic image, have you become immortal and achieved moksha?
No, because see, no artificial intelligence system will ever have subjective experience. For example, if you ask digital Deepak, what do you eat for breakfast? The answer is, I don't eat anything. Okay. So, right, it doesn't have hunger, it doesn't feel sex, it doesn't feel fear, it doesn't fear mortality. So, it is a replication of knowledge, data, information, possibly wisdom, but no subjectivity. And that is what we are talking about. Immortality only comes through moksha and getting rid of all provisional identities as just that. When I meditate at night, I look at my childhood and my teenage years and my medical school, say, what happened? They don't exist. What happened to my childhood? It doesn't exist. But what happened to yesterday? It doesn't exist. What happened to 5 minutes? What happens to this moment? What happened to a moment ago? It's gone. Okay. So once you realize that time is the fluctuation of experience and you are timeless, only that is moksha, not AI, not digital Deepak. As we speak right now, I'm creating a digital Deepak for diabetes because,
Yeah.
now we can instantly monitor sugar, we can instantly intervene too with all the interventions. There's no limitation to where artificial intelligence will take us, but it'll never have subjectivity.
That's true. So other thing that I think another question that people are asking for, and I want to get your take on it, is that when something bad happens in your life, how do you deal with that? And the way I have found, Deepak, is that the minute you label something, an event, it is good or bad, it actually changes your perception. The event is good or bad, you won't know it is good or bad, maybe for decades to come. But people essentially label it, and that label changes their mindset. So, for example, if I stub my toe, I think something terrible happened and everyone feels sad and I feel bad for myself, right? But a month later, if there is a draft in the country and I don't get drafted because I stub my toe and I can't walk properly, I'm suddenly happy. So the event, was it really a good event or a bad event, actually will not get defined until someday in the later. But the fact we put a label to it, that changes our perception of is it good or bad. So how do we deal with that? Something that terrible happened in your life and you call that terrible and then suddenly you have a sorrow.
So there are two schools that deal with this. One is a Western cognitive, positive thinking psychology school, which says
Yeah.
always change your interpretation, reframe the situation so it's looking more positive instead of negative. And that's been very
Mhm.
successful, by the way. I mean, there's just been a whole school around that, starting with Dale Carnegie and all these social scientists. But actually, our tradition says no. You have to be independent of both pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, birth and death. The true self is beyond hope and despair. And so it cannot be acquired through a system of thought. Happiness cannot come through a system of thought. You have to go to the source of thought. And when you go to the source of thought, it's also the source of sensation, perception, images, feelings, emotions, personal relationships, social interactions, and the world we see. Unless you go to the source, you're basically polishing the mirror. And if the image is not good, polishing the mirror will make the image even worse. So and breaking the mirror doesn't get rid of the reality. So instead of polishing the mirror by positive thinking, you go to the source of thought, which is pure consciousness. That is the only place where you will find what they call the peace that passes understanding. If you look at the religious experience, every tradition, first thing is transcendence. You experience yourself beyond space, time, and causality. Second thing is the emergence of Platonic truth: goodness, beauty, harmony, evolution, creativity, inspiration, insight, imagination, vision. And the third is the loss of the fear of death. Now, if you gave me these three as gifts, that your true identity is
Yeah.
beyond space and time, that you have truth, goodness, and beauty built into you, and that you, the real self, the absolute self, never dies, you're all set. What are you going to worry about?
So, one way is also when, I'm just trying to be more practical about the people when something happens that they
Hey,
call
I'm a
good or
practical
bad.
guy. Look at me, I'm practical. I'm not metaphysical bullshit, right? This is not
No, but my
metaphysical
point,
bullshit. This is very practical. People are so mired in their problems that anything that's creative is impractical.
yeah. So, okay, fine. So I'm not going to go there. What I was thinking was when something happens, one way to realize that is universe is your friend versus universe is your enemy. So when something
Universe is your
happens that looks,
creation. It's not your friend. It's your creation. Aham Brahmasmi. Brahman and Brahmand. That's it. Brahman is the consciousness, by Brahmand is the vibration. Period. You are the creator
so
of the
my,
universe.
so if I am the creator of the universe and the universe is a creator of me, right? And then you can believe that as a creator, it is my friend. So even anything that happens in my life, I think it is for the best. It has a purpose. That's why it happened. And everything happens, what we call good or bad, changes who we become. And if we can fall in love with ourselves as we are, the world will fall in love with us. And people have such a difficult time falling in love with themselves. We treat ourselves worse than we can treat an enemy.
But falling in love with yourself is not falling in love with your self image. That you should run for office if you want to fall in love with that kind of self. You should, that is Mr. Trump. It's the perfect example
Yeah.
of a narcissist. And it's confused with self love. Self love is actually getting rid of
Yes.
our ego. When we get rid of
I
our
agree.
ego, then there is
Yeah.
love. And that love
Yes.
projects itself as, as joy.
And that's what I really meant. Self-love does not mean really being
Not
self-conceited. It really means, yeah. not
Non-harmful.
looking for approval for someone else. I mean, it's you are so joy. You don't have to have someone tell you how great you are because you're joyful in yourself, right? Um, so
Ananda
yeah,
Shakti. It's
and
called
that
Ananda Shakti.
what is that, Deepak? I couldn't hear you.
Ananda Shakti. Shakti
Ananda
means
Shakti. Okay.
Ananda Shakti, which means the
Yeah.
Shakti,
So
spontaneous joy, unprovoked joy.
that is the key, is that people don't understand the power of love and joy that comes from just being you, being in the presence of and the people you love, and people who love you, people who support you, people who always bring you up. And having that childlike curiosity. And Deepak, I want to get your thought. As we age, we lose that. Child is curious, innocent, everything, the color, they get, I mean, the eyes brighten up. They're in awe with the flower, they awe with the leaf. And as we grow up, we are no longer in awe of the world, and we lose the curiosity. And to me, the day you lose the intellectual curiosity is the day you die, and we live that dead life. You're no longer curious. So tell me, Deepa, how do you think about that? Curiosity as a
Very
way of living.
simple, very simple understanding is you don't grow old. When you stop
Yeah,
growing, you become old.
yeah.
So when you stop growing, you become old.
Okay,
Okay. As long
that's
as you
very
grow,
good.
you will stay vital and healthy. Always have this idea that my existence is a perpetual surprise. I'm so grateful for it. What is the creative opportunity that is coming through me? The whole universe is coming through me right now. So, you look at a child, as you said, they're full of curiosity and wonder, but they're also spontaneously joyful. Children
Yes.
are in this for no reason whatsoever. They just like to play. And we have forgotten how to
Yeah.
play. So once you return to the understanding that life is a play, then you can upgrade the play because you're the
So
choreographer,
I'm
director, the hero and villain of the play.
I'm going to repeat what you just said, Deepak, because to me that was such a great concept. You don't get old when you are growing. And when you're growing, you mean intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. And you
Expanding your
start becoming old,
expanding your
yeah.
awareness.
And you
That's
expect, yeah, yeah. And when you start to feel, you get old when you stop growing. That means
that's it.
if you want to live forever, all you have to do is constantly learn and grow and expand your consciousness, expand your perception of what is going on. Is that the way to become immortal?
What is immortality? It's the understanding that consciousness, at the level of consciousness, you're already immortal. You were never born. If you asked Adi Shankara, are you immortal? Adi Shankara died before he was 30 years old. But he understood that his true self was not in time. That is true immortality. Now, having said that, you should also ask, what is my body made of? You see, so that determines how you treat your body. Okay. So on one level, you say body is made of matter. It's an anatomical structure. How do I fix it? Through surgery. Okay. And through pharmaceuticals. Second level, you say, no, my body is made of energy. How do I do it? By maximizing the energy in my body through lifestyle. Third level is no, body is made of information. Oh, why do I look at the genetic microbiome?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's another level. Your body is not energy, it's not matter, it's not information. Those are human constructs for modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness. Your body is actually made out of pure consciousness. Therefore, you have access to infinite possibilities. This right now, what you're seeing is a particular morphing of the formless. So
Mhm.
Rabindranath Tagore, in this playhouse of infinite forms, I found the formless. And so my life was blessed. Once you start identifying yourself as formless consciousness, this body itself becomes a play.
Well, I have to admit, Deepak, you and I were having dinner together a couple of months months ago and I saw you. You look like a teenager now. You have lost so much weight. You're healthier than I've ever seen you. And all I can say is I want to be like you when I grow up and stay as healthy.
Thanks for saying it, but it's not even important. Joy is much more
I
important
know,
than you look like.
but
This
that's
is
my point. That
this is the signature of what is happening at a deeper level.
But my point is, it is like that is because of joy. And I want to continue to have that joy with you and with the family we have. And I think we're coming to a point where I think we're going to end it here. But before we do, I wanted to see if there are, as closing, if you have any closing thought for all the people who are listening to it, any closing
I
thought for
do
them
have a
on
closing thought.
happiness.
I do have a closing thought, and
Yeah.
I actually want your support and want the support of everybody on this. So check out this website, www.neveralone.love. Once again, www.neveralone.love. It's a global site of the Chopra Foundation for mental depression, health and well-being, tackling mental depression, mental hygiene. We are creating a cryptocurrency to pay for people who need depression treatment. We have an artificial intelligence bot there. We want to put information about the biome there as well. But please check out www.neveralone.love. It's an initiative of the Chopra Foundation to create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. Come and participate with us. Become part of the global community of what we call love in action. Because love without, this is my final word, love without action is irrelevant. And action without love is meaningless. But love in action is the mantra to Ananda Shakti.
Well, so first of all, Deepak, I echo what you said. Our friend Gabriella and Punacha and you are doing a great job on Never Alone, and I'm absolutely thankful to you. And obviously, depression is a big problem. A lot of the good souls are being lost, and many of our friends that we know have lost their life to this. I would say is, please know that love is great and proper nutrition. And please do check out viome.com, viome.com, to understand the basic understanding of what's the human body, what are the proper nutrition for you. And Deepak, as always, what an honor and a pleasure to always have this conversation. And everyone who's listening to it, just know, please come join us at a TEDx Gateway again. And hopefully you'll have another great session with other people. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.